I've given you some examples that I think are pretty exciting in the video space. We've seen things on the PC, we've seen things from video games, we've seen things from the TV. But one of the places where you might say, gosh, how do I excite people in the world of radio? You'd think of the, maybe the oldest form of electronic medium in some ways, and how do we get those people excited? So what I want to do is I want to bring out Jason Duplantis from BBC Radio, and he's going to talk about how they face this challenge in the BBC context. Jason?
Hi, how are you?
Good to have you. Come on out.
Thanks.
So you heard me talk about Gears of War.
Yep.
You saw the cool example with National Geographic. You're in a little bit of a different situation, a little bit of a different space. You're a government-sponsored radio program. How do you think about this? What are the types of things you were trying to accomplish and work on in this area?
Well, like you said, we're publicly funded broadcasters, so we're very, very different from most of the other major media organizations in the world in that we don't get any advertising revenue. All of our revenue comes from a fee that's paid by people in the UK who have a television.
Right.
That's it. And the only way that we can keep them paying that fee is for them to keep appreciating us and attributing credit to us. So it's incredibly important that we constantly build up that type of relationship with our audience members. Now, one of the audiences that we have a really hard time with is teenagers and young people.
It's that 18 to 34 demographic that I was talking about before.
It's the Xbox guys.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly
and so people love us when they're young, people love us when they're old, but in between it's a little bit tricky. So one of the things we're trying to do, and what I'm going to show today, is how we can bring Radio 1, which is our youth radio service, together with the web, which is someplace where these guys are native and other parts of the internet experience, to try and build up a much stronger type of relationship and get more credit from them.
Sure. Now, talk to us about what you did to actually make that happen from a Windows application perspective, a technology perspective. Because I know you actually went in and used the technology to bring that out.
We did. What we did here is we've been prototyping with Silverlight and some of the APIs that MSN are opening up to try and get to more of the places where the teenagers are native, get the content out in front of them in places where they want to be around their internet experience. So this is all part of our BBC 2.0 initiative, which is trying to reinvent the way the BBC operates on the web over the next 3 years.
Sure.
And the way we're trying to do that is through following some principles that we've got, which is about being part of the web, not just being a big content island on it. We want to interoperate with as many technologies and services and platforms as possible. We want to build a more personalized experience, and you'll see some of that here when I show you how this application works.
Right.
We need to deliver on our promise of high-quality content and editorial, and deliver a distinctive portfolio of services and content for all of our audience members as universally as possible.
Yeah, you have kind of a unique challenge from a brand perspective, because BBC is probably the most storied and in some ways best known entertainment brand in the world. And yet, again, for that 18 to 34-year-old demographic, tough to engage.
They're very tough to get. They're very tough to get, and that's why we're using technology to get in there.
Cool. Why don't you show us what you got?
Sure. So what we've done is we've built up this application around a character called Jack, who lives in a world where there's a lot of Radio 1 around him, but he's not appreciating it, he's not realizing, he's not attributing credit back to the BBC for that. So he might go to clubs where the Radio 1 DJs are, he might go to gigs that we've sponsored, he might hear it in his friend's car, but he's just not having that connection. So what's happened in this demonstration is Jack has been at the Leeds Festival, which is a huge rock music festival in the north of England. And on stage, one of the Radio 1 personalities has done a call to action to say, send in your Messenger screen name via text, and we'll give you a special present when you get home. So Jack gets home and he goes to log into Messenger because he's dying to talk to his friends about what he's just seen at the festival. And when he logs in, he gets a thing that says, you have a new badge from Radio 1. So he clicks to open that up, and this badge is a little mark of pride that he can attach to his online identity. It's a bit like an achievement in the gaming systems
Sure.
in Xbox.
That's right.
And so this is something that's really cool for him to have, we hope, and it's something that's exclusive to him. The content isn't, but the badge in his identity is. So when he clicks on that, he can explore that, and it's got multimedia content in it. So it's got articles, it's got photographs that he can explore, it's got videos, so he can peek into those if he wants to. And then it's also got audio content. So if he goes into the video, he can start to explore that. He sees this as My Chemical Romance. He doesn't particularly want to see them, but it goes down into his playlist in case he wants it. Then he can go up and queue up some audio content to listen to when that's done, and then maybe he goes in, and actually what he wants to watch first is this clip of the Kaiser Chiefs, who are his all-time favorite band. He absolutely loves them. And so he clicks on that and brings that up. and he starts to watch, and he really wants to relive the experience. So he puts it into full screen, and he can watch them coming on stage as contextual content is coming in from Flickr, which shows our whole part of the web kind of philosophy that we want to bring content in and out from other places. And then he gets an exclusive Radio 1 interview that we did backstage that he couldn't get at the festival, where he can see the band being interviewed in a picture-in-picture experience while the sound is faded out in the background.
So you're actually showing all the things I've talked about for the last 45 minutes, because you're showing interactivity.
Yeah, we're trying to use as much of it as
community,
possible.
And all of those types of things.
Absolutely. So he closes that back down into his playlist, where he's getting that personal experience that we're trying to help him build up. And then as we're starting to get to know more about him, we can start to bring him some recommendations using different intelligence and the technology. So here it's recommending that he watch one of our rock shows, which is hosted by Zane Lowe, because the Kaiser Chiefs were interviewed there. So he can pop that on and listen to it if he wants in his media queue. And he can have that as something he just sits and watches, or he can bounce it down into his playlist. So that he can do other things online while he's listening to the radio. And he can also set a reminder if he wants to, so that the next time that that program is on, he gets a messenger alert to remind him to go and watch that. And he can listen to that. And he can listen on digital radio, linear radio, online, however.
Sure.
We don't care as long as he's getting that content. So everything in this environment is drag and drop, which really makes it easy for him to explore and do different things and continue his journey. So he takes the picture and he drops it into the search engine, which isn't a search like you're used to. It's a visual search, and it's driven by clicking on things, which then brings back more related multimedia assets.
So these sort of navigating a web, if you will, of connections between Kaiser Chiefs and maybe somebody else the band was in.
Exactly.
And some other direction that
Exactly.
goes with
It's
something
making
else they did.
all sorts of connections for him across all types of media in a very kind of fun, entertaining, and visual way. So because he's like this badge, he wants to make his own. And that's one of the great things that this allows people to do. He can aggregate and re-aggregate the content however he wants, so that he can then share it with other people, his friends, other members of the public who maybe he doesn't know. He can do any of this stuff. So he brings a whole bunch of clips into the Badge Studio and pops that open, and he can give it a name. He can attach keywords that let him pull in RSS content from around the BBC and around the web, put a description on it if he wants, and then he has the opportunity to create it as a private badge, which is just a personal little collection of media content, or a public badge. And that's what he's going to do, because he wants to share this with all of the people that he knows. So he can say, I'm a Kaiser Chiefs fan, and this is my favorite bits of them.
This goes back to exactly what I was talking about before about the social community on Xbox Live. This is you,
Absolutely.
in an interesting way, you enabling your listeners to create their own social community, which then attributes back to the BBC brand.
Completely, completely. And we know that this is an environment that people, teenagers who are into gaming, are used to and comfortable with. So this is a great opportunity for us to present the BBC in a way that they're comfortable with and that feels right for them, we hope. So he can watch this badge now to make sure he's got it just the way he wants it by dragging it into the media queue and double checking what's in there. And then, one of the really cool things he can do is actually share it via Messenger. So he goes into Messenger and starts talking to his friend Jill. And Jill is someone he was at the festival with, and he wants to relive that whole kind of concert experience with her. So he goes in and he starts chatting, and then he can open up an activity window where they actually share the badge. And this is fantastic for us, because we know that people try to do this with the radio player that we have now. They kind of start the radio program, go 3, 2, 1, press the button, and they're chatting in different windows, and it doesn't quite come together. So this is, again, us trying to adapt our content and applications to the places where the audience are behaving the way that they already are.
What it enables you to do is to create the virtual living room. Because
Exactly.
instead of having to invite Jill over, and in today's world, Jill might be in a different city, she might be at a different university, they can now have that
Absolutely.
virtual couch experience just right on the
Absolutely.
PC.
So it takes away that solo experience to a certain extent. And it's, we know teenagers are in Messenger, and we know that they're there all the time. So again, it's us pushing our content out to where they are and finding new ways of delivering it.
So now, how did this get you to a deeper engagement with your audience? How does this accrue back to the BBC, and how does that benefit you?
Well, hopefully what we're doing is bringing the BBC to where they are, instead of saying, you have to come to us, which is very parochial.
Right.
It's not, and what we're trying to do is constantly build up that brand experience. So you'll see, we've got Radio 1 all over the place here, which is one thing. But at the same time, we're kind of associating Radio 1 with things they're familiar with and experiences they're familiar with, which, with teenagers, you've got to make them think it's cool. And so these are the things that they think are cool, hopefully.
So last question for the audience. They saw Ray's presentation yesterday where he was sort of showing the fundamentals of how. How did you guys build this? What tools did you guys use to do this?
Well, we use Silverlight for a lot of it, and we use a lot of the APIs that are opening up. And this is part of the kind of constant innovation that we're trying to do, where we use and prototype with as many different technologies, especially the kind of Web 2.0 technologies, as possible. So this is a great opportunity for us to do.
And of course, Silverlight will enable you to take this across multiple platforms.
Exactly, and that's why
multiple browsers
exactly,
and all that
exactly, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're trying to show here is, how you can move in and out of different applications, and with different users all having a great experience.
That is an awesome experience. Congratulations, great work.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for
very
having
much.
us.
Good stuff.